Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Barry Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and got a little bit of a change up today in that I've got Generation Mining to talk to about today, and I think they're in a really unique position as far as where they are on the Lassonde curve, but also because they're exposed to platinum group metals. And there really are not a lot of great stocks to follow in that for those metals. And so I wanted to chat with Jamie Levy about those. And thank you very much for joining us today, Jamie.
Thank you for having me. It's very much appreciative. It's nice to get out here and a different story today than it was the last time we spoke. It's no more permitting being fully permitted, and as you just mentioned, and the pricing of PGMs has started to tick the right way. So catching up to the performance of golds, and I think the PGM stocks should start to move as well as the gold stocks have obviously recently hit 52-week highs, and I think a lot of the PGM stocks are still 50 to 75% below their 52-week high. So lots of room to grow for these stocks to move higher.
So when I look at platinum, and I notice that not a lot of people have really picked up on the dramatic breakout it's had recently. But I kind of look at platinum and palladium sort of how I look at gold and silver. Gold tends to lead silver, and it certainly looks like platinum is starting to lead palladium. And but palladium is also getting a much more bullish trend, or at least an improving trend. And it was the both were coming from very low bases. How do you what do you respond to that kind of outlook, Jamie?
Well, we have both platinum and palladium, so I'm happy they both go up. Obviously, we do have a little bit or a lot more palladium than we do have platinum, but they should move together. There is a bit of a disconnect. Sometimes the palladium went to $3,000 and platinum didn't go. But that was a shortage and that was a crisis in Russia, in the Ukraine, so a war over there. So I think that was a lot of the reason for that. But I think they're both in deficit. We've been talking about that for a long time. So I think the demand is obviously stabilizing with the hybrid and the plug-in hybrid interest and the lack of interest in the battery electric vehicles, and obviously the supply, the cost, which we could talk about later on, but the cost of all these mines in South Africa is they're losing money at sub $1,000. So here they're finally starting to break even on some of the platinum projects down in South Africa.
So what do you think it is that's recently had this big breakout in platinum that's kind of a stealth move so far?
Well, I think there's a lot more room for it to move. I think a lot of it had to do with the cost curves that if you looked again, I mentioned it just recently that a lot of these producers were producing below cost. So they were shutting down production. And so that is obviously simple supply demand that creates higher prices or reduced supply out there. So I think people realize, and I think some of the the interest in the demand for PGMs and through the hybrid vehicles have certainly made a difference. And also the interest in the gold and silver market, as you brought up before, has brought in some money into the market. And people are like, wait, Savannah is trading at $3 and $4. It was just trading at $22. And Powell is trading at $3, $4. 52-week high was $21. What's wrong? They do produce gold as well, but I think there's a lot of interest coming back into these stocks as well. And, we're starting to get interest in generation mining too. Obviously not a producer, but hopefully a near-term producer.
Now, I platinum and palladium they get produced together, and the move has been quite outsized in platinum over palladium. Do you think that there's some big event happening behind the scenes that could affect that outsized move?
Well, I think majority of the platinum would be produced, I guess, in South Africa, and the majority of the palladium produced would be Russia and South Africa. So I think Russia is continuously produced palladium to whether rumors are to fund the war in Ukraine. But needless to say is that I think the platinum move has a lot to do with the depressed pricing for so long that these producers were shutting down production. And now, again, to reiterate, I think the demand is finally coming out there that, wait, gold's at $3,000 or $3,500 an ounce. Platinum's trading at $1,000. Platinum used to trade at a premium to gold. What's going on here? And then, talk to one of my large investors out of the US. He's like, the whole PGM market, 7 million ounces of platinum's produced a year, or 6 million ounces, 7 million ounces of palladium produced a year. That's a $13 billion industry putting those two together. That's so small compared to gold, which is, I don't even know how much gold's produced, 300,000 ounces or 300 million ounces a year. It's just so small relative to the market. And I think that it's very easy for these stocks to have, or the pricing of the platinum palladium to have a big move. And I believe they should catch up to gold at some point.
So you think that it's more of a South Africa related situation on the supply side because they're a little more
Yeah,
platinum heavy there.
correct. And then again, talking about the demand has come back for the ETFs, and then the demand for, I'm sure, the OEMs that will need to stock up for some of the increase in car sales for the hybrids and plug-in hybrids.
So that's a bit of a shift too, Jimmy, is that sometimes the markets can be narrative driven more than reality driven. And I think for a few years, everybody was sort of, well, it's all EV, EV, EV. And people are starting to think that, well, maybe EV is not, going through a revolution. Yes, it is improving and is going in a positive direction, but in between maybe where it'll end up and where we are today, hybrids are going to, and the ICE engine is not going away.
Yeah, there's a little saying that children have, I told you so. And, my chairman, Kerry, and I have been saying this for the past 3, 4 years. And I think a lot of people were drinking the Kool-Aid on the BEVs. And I do think that they are great, but it's not going to be what everybody wants. And the world cannot handle 100% BEVs. And we've been telling people, what's the point, investors? And, in Germany, for instance, to have a battery electric vehicle doesn't seem to make much sense if the power source is coal. So I think some people are starting to awaken that it doesn't make the most sense right now for BEVs. Maybe 10, 20 years or different technology, smaller batteries. But as of right now, I think people are quite happy with the plug-in hybrids and the regular hybrids. And, news out of China is BYD of the plug-in hybrids are outselling the battery electric vehicles as well right now. So this shift is happening not only in North America, but also in China as well, which is the largest car market in the world, I believe.
Well, and I live in Mexico and I see those BYD cars everywhere these days. They make great cars and they
Do they? I
and
want
they
to see one.
are reasonably priced as well.
Well, I don't think they're going to get allowed in the US anytime soon, but maybe
Now,
Canada they will. But it'd be nice to see them. I've seen them from videos, but
Europe, places like where I live in Mexico, very popular. Good cars and they're not expensive.
when you invite me down there, Barry, Alan, it'd be
Yeah,
nice to see it. So,
yeah. We'll have to go to one of the beaches.
okay, done.
Well,
Maybe
Jamie,
not in the summer.
yeah, there you go. There you go. I really appreciate your insights because you kind of got your finger on the pulse. But most importantly, for me is what's going on with your company because when I look at metals that I'm bullish on, I always see the best opportunity in the high quality companies when I'm looking at major miners or mid tiers, junior miners, developers, and in the PGE and copper world, there's not a lot of great development projects, and you guys have had some really important milestones lately. And can you tell our audience about that, Jamie?
Yeah, thanks. So, a long time ago, it seems like a different life ago, we received our environmental assessment back in November of 2022. And we had told investors during videos and calls and everything that, we believed it would take a year to a year and a half to get these permits to be shovel ready. Unfortunately, that timing took a little bit longer. So we just received our final permits. I can't even remember how long ago it was, but call it about 2 months or so ago. We received our final permit from Ministry of Energy and Conservation and Parks from Ontario. So now we're fully permitted. But what our team did, and again, sorry for the long-winded answer, is we took our time on our permitting. We made sure that the permits were going to be easy for us or easier for the government to work along. A lot of times, companies will rush into construction without being fully permitted, and then they're going to be non-compliant in some of their permits. We worked with our First Nation partners and the government to make sure that these permits, whether they were 144 pages because they're throwing everything in there in the kitchen sink, we said we don't need all this other. So we think that we have maybe the fit for purposes and the right definition, but we definitely got very good permits. So when we're operating this project during construction or operations, it's going to be a lot more feasible. What we've been getting a lot of interest in this company is the fact that we are critical metals. And what the president in between our two countries has done. He has produced the need for mining. Friedland used to have a saying, I'm not going to go through the whole joke, but Sally, the ham sandwich doesn't come from from the fridge. And I think a lot of kids and people out there believe that we can get these metals without mining, we can get the fertilizer without mining, we could get the rare earths and the phones and everything else without mining. And I think people are finally starting to awaken to this as the politicians are. Maybe we can't get 100% BEVs. Now we need to start supporting mining. So what we're starting to get is some interest from from the governments, whether it be on the permitting side or on the funding side, that wait, we can help companies that like Generation Mining because they need money to build this project, and their permitting timeline's taking way too long. So we could help navigate some of the red tape that's out there. So we think that the president of the United States has certainly helped politicians waking up, and I think to other people to wake up that critical metals are needed, and the metals that we are mining are there's very few, if any, that are shovel ready in Canada and in Ontario. I believe we are the only shovel ready critical metal project in Ontario that's shovel ready today.
I think the same can be said for the United States as well.
Probably. I don't know. Well, maybe Pebble's going to get built sometime soon, according to some people. But I mean, I don't know. But I guess they do have the big project down in, is it Arizona or Utah that Rio Tinto has? I think they are trying to fast track some of the permitting that's down there. So I don't know if you want to have a 3-day permitting schedule, but I think there will be a push to get some of these projects over the line. But this project has gone through an environmental assessment and the permits and consent from the First Nation. So we're glad to be here. We put in a lot of money and time into getting to this stage, and now it's just getting the final monies and to make a financial investment decision and to be the next again critical metal project getting developed in Ontario.
So, you brought up a little bit about Trump there, and actually, when I looked at it, I thought that this could be the wake-up call that is actually the best thing that could happen to Canada because Canada has so many natural resources and the world needs it. It doesn't all have to go to the south. And I thought that, my feeling was that, well, if you don't want our stuff, then it will force our politicians to start looking east and west for customers. And there's a lot of customers throughout the world that need what Canada can produce in natural resources. And I thought that, it might get these politicians in Ottawa to start looking at, what do we do well and where are our customers and what do we need to do into the future, even if the tariffs were stopped tomorrow. I still think it makes good business sense to be diversifying instead of sending everything to the south.
I agree, and it's not only the U.S. I think we have to worry about. I think we have to worry about China. We have to worry about Russia, and South Africa. Friendly country today, but who knows what happens in the future. So I just think the U.S. was a wake-up call because we all saw that bright red hat talking, and made a lot of people upset. At the end of the day, though, it's not just the U.S. I think there's other countries we got to be worried about as well. So China is the biggest issue, I believe. And I think we have to be realizing that we can't rely on rare earths. We can't rely on all the lithium processing that has to happen in China right now. Let's try to figure out a way that North America, whether it's Mexico, Toronto, or Mexico, Canada, the US doing it together, or we each do it individually, but we should work together to not have to rely on China, Russia, other countries for the critical metals that are needed for everything.
Well, that's a longer term trend that I think is starting to, and it's part economics, and now it's part Trump's trade war, is that onshoring, instead of sending all the manufacturing and all the mining offshore, that it's more important to start bringing it back home, if you will. And that puts you in a unique position as well because you're in a great province for mining and you're in a great country for mining.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, the Trump tariffs, whether again they happen, I don't know if they're on or off today, but it was like you said, it's a wake-up call for not only the politicians but also for the investors. And I think, whenever he came in January 6th or whatever it was when he announced the tariffs, that's when I think the people started to wake up, gold started to take off, and then copper started to move, and now PGMs are catching up. So I think there's a lot more room for the PGMs, and there's certainly a lot more room for copper. So I think we got the right, revenue mix of metals in our economics of our study, and I'm quite happy that this project will be quite robust when it's built and in production.
So we talked about the metals, we talked about the permitting, but why I've always been interested in your project is the project itself. Right on a highway, close to a mining town, so you don't need to build a big camp to mine it. Let's talk a bit about, before I gotta let you go, let's talk about the project itself. What makes that marathon so exciting?
Um, it's a very good point. I mean, Canada and Northern Ontario has some infrastructure issues. We were lucky enough that someone decided to put a highway very close to our project. That someone built two power
Kind of
lines
going
that
right through it, isn't it?
yeah, two
Okay.
power lines there. There was a famous gold discovery back in the 80s, Hemlo, and so that kind of made Marathon a very interesting town. It was a bit of a boom back then for those of you that don't know the whole Hemlo story, the big gold rush in Northern Ontario, but that's just 45 kilometers or 45 minutes away from Marathon. But we have a town, we have First Nations that are supportive. We have a road right to the project that our workers could basically ride their bikes to work. We got an airport there. We're right on good old Canadian Shield hard rock. There's very little overburden. We've done a fair amount of geotech drilling, or all the geotech drilling that I think we need right now. It outcrops at surface. It's pretty simple open pit mining, as simple as you can get for open pit. There should be no issues with it. Obviously, there's still some big capital numbers, but looking at some of the other projects that I know the governments are looking at, the Ring of Fire, where there's no rail. We got two rail lines down here. We got road. We got carbon free power from Southern Ontario. Like we check all these boxes, and some of these other companies, there's going to be billions and billions of dollars of capital, and their operating costs are going to be very high. And ours are going to, they're still pretty high for being in Canada, but we're quite happy that the infrastructure is as quite phenomenal as it is. And the reason why this project was never developed earlier was a couple of the other companies that had it, they weren't ready to build it, and the commodity prices weren't there. But copper at, I haven't looked today, but is it 450, $5 copper? I mean, this is unheard of for this project since it's been there. And palladium at 11, $1,200, and platinum at 1,400, and gold at 3,000. I mean, this is a very robust project at today's pricing.
When you did the past economic studies, what were the inputs on those metals? Have they that current price
Well,
changed?
unfortunately, we had three different pricing on there, and I don't have it in front of me, and I don't want to be obnoxious to pull it up right now, but we did have spot pricing, which was a lot lower than it is today. We did have consensus pricing, which is probably similar to the pricing of today, and then we had the 3-year trailing average, which is the industry norm for the pricing. So we were below the 3-year trailing averages. I guess gold would probably be higher, and platinum would probably be higher, but palladium was just over 1,500, and I think copper was at 4, and I think copper is again 450, 475 today, and palladium's at 11,
Almost
1,200.
five
And
bucks
yeah,
on
so
copper.
yeah, so I don't know if you're looking at LME or COMEX, but
Okay.
yeah, so I think there's a little bit of a difference. But needless to say, is I think this project is trending in the right direction, and the economics on any of the three levels that we had in our study, they're all robust. They're all short paybacks of under 2.5 years. IR in the mid 20s to high 20s, and I think
And
MPV
long
anywhere
mine
from
life, right?
yeah, and I think that the mine life, unfortunately, engineers only like to go 13 years because after 13 years, you gotta buy all new equipment and bigger pushback. So MPV is pretty much nil to that. I mean, we all like to have longer mine life, but our resources are much more than our reserves, but they're not able to convert at today's pricing. But we know at the bottom of the pit there will be more, and we know that, this open pit disseminated project, sulfide project has come somewhere underground. So, when we have a little bit more money during development, we'll be trying to find that feeder zone and maybe find that high grade that we know there is some potential to find it, but we're just not going to look to do that right now. Our focus is in developing again this project, the shovel-ready project, financed and built.
Well, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, Jamie, is I'm a big fan of the Lassonde curve. Most people in our business, they tend to look most at that first run in the left side of the Lassonde curve, which can be very exciting. Then you've got the development discount window, but then there's a sweet spot after you've moved well along the development discount window that you convert from being a developer into a developed project. And that can have even more of a positive effect than the left side of the curve. And this makes you unique to me as well because there just aren't a lot of in gold, silver, copper, platinum, palladium. There aren't a lot of companies that are in that sweet spot that I really like to pay attention to. And what are your feelings on where you are on the Lassonde curve and whether you pay attention to it?
Well, it is in my presentation, and your last name does sound like Lassonde a little bit, or at
A
least the
little
starting of it. So maybe
bit.
you're a billionaire like him soon enough if you invest in the companies in the Lassonde curve. So I believe in the Lassonde curve. I think that the development stage, whether permitting stage, and as other people like to call it, valley of death, waiting for the permits. So we're out of that. So are we a year? Are we 2 years? Are we a month? I don't know how long, but we are on the right track, going to go back up that Lassonde curve. And I think to your point, there's very few projects that are in this sort of Lassonde curve. And, Pierre being a billionaire must have realized that this mining cycle made some sense and that it's a good time for certain people to invest. And, I'm not saying today is the day, but it's something, as you mentioned, Alan, it's a good time for people to take a look at because, fully financed project critical metals in tier one jurisdiction, we should be trading at a lot less than, for if our NPV of our project is 800, $900 billion and our market cap is sub a billion, we're trading at 10% of our net present value. Analysts say we should be trading anywhere between 40 to 90%. Developers trade at NAV, so our NPV. So, we got a lot of room to grow, and whether it takes us a year, 2 years, again, a week, but I think we're going to get re-rated. And I sometimes I have to thank the guy with the red hat, but I think he's made a lot of investors realize that we need these critical metals out of the ground. And I think now's the time that people should take notice of Generation and other stocks out there, because there's a lack of supply of these metals, and we're gonna be a producer very soon.
I think another mistake that people make when they look at the Lassonde curve, and I've kind of toyed with the idea of having a Lassonde curve 2.0, is that they kind of look at that valley as totally flat, and then it goes like this. But actually, what happens, there's a Lassonde curve for different uh, places where you are with the metal. So, for example, if we're in a bull market for gold, the left side of the curve is going to be much steeper and longer lasting, and the plateau will be longer and the decline will be shorter. Then the valley will be higher, and then if you're in a medium, it will all that curve will come down, and if you're in a bear market for the metals, it will be even lower. But what I also noticed at the end of the valley is that once you get through that permitting point, that's when it's more of a you start going up the hill, if you will. It's not this
Yeah.
dead flat valley. And that is where that leads to the sweet spot when you get that big move on the right side of the curve. So that's where I think you guys are in that
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, and I had one other analyst talk about it. He also thought that the far right side could even be higher because a lot of the companies get taken out when they start to dig a hole, get your final permits, get into production. So you never actually get that full value up there, because as we've all seen over the past little while in consolidation in the gold sector with the gold prices going higher, there's lots of re-rating that's happening, and Discovery Silver buying, the Timmins camp and Orla. You get a lot of this nice lift as well buying that asset. So doesn't might not see it in the Lassonde curve, but there is a lot of lift to these assets. So I think it's a good time to be in, and we're in a different area than a lot of other people at the PDAC. We're not producers, we're not explorations, we're advanced development, as I like to call it. So shovel ready. So I'd like to go talk to a few other people and see if they have the same hair loss that I'm having over the past couple of years. So
Well, hopefully your losing days are coming to an end and you're at a more exciting spot, Jamie. Lately, your stock has started to improve, which is encouraging with the recent movement in the price of platinum. Palladium starts moving and copper starts moving, and it only helps you out even more. So I thought it was a great time to get you back on the show. It's been too long, and I'm glad you joined me today, Jamie.
no, I really thank you, and I do appreciate what you do for the mining, and thank you to bring in a non-gold and silver company, because there's very few of us out there. It'd be nice if we started getting some of the loving of the gold and silvers, but I know our time will come.
I think it's closer than a lot of people think, Jamie.
My fingers are crossed.
All right, man. Well, thank you very
Thank you.
much, and I'll close it off now. There you go, folks. I am very bullish on platinum and palladium for a lot of the reasons and copper for a lot of the reasons that Jamie and I talked about. But I always like leverage to the price of those metals moving up. And so I pay more attention to the stocks, the companies. And in that PGE, Platinum Group Metals area, there really is not a lot to talk about. And in the whole sector, whether you're looking at gold, copper, silver, lead, zinc, platinum, palladium, there really isn't a lot of companies that are well along that Lassonde curve and heading into that sweet spot and going up the right side of the Lassonde curve. And really, when it comes to platinum group metals and copper, that menu gets even smaller. So if we get any winds of optimism and generalists or institutions want exposure, there is very few companies like Generation that have those kind of projects. And so I think this is a timely uh, point to talk to Jamie about his company, and I'm glad he joined us. And I would advise you always, my shows are not for buying and selling recommendations. I try to be an idea generator, and it's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. And a great place to do that is on their website. Go to look at their corporate presentation, and that will help you do your homework. And I hope we helped you do some homework today. And on that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.